Hi, and welcome to our webinar on the Kimberley region, and this is focusing on the culture. I'm Liz Webb, the International Sales Manager here. The rich cultures of the traditional owners bring the Kimberley alive. You get out there and you experience, you see how they've been living, what they've been doing, what they've been drawing, how they survived. You're able to live and breathe the aspects of what they've been doing. But it's a really quite serene, peaceful, natural-based region being able to go through. Today, we've got the knowledgeable Steve Cox with us. He's going to be talking to you about the Kimberley region, and Steve was part of our expedition team. We've actually been operating the Kimberley for over 4 decades now, and we have our 3 vessels going through, and from March through to October each year. But Steve, please tell us a little bit more about yourself and the Kimberley.
Thank you, Liz. Yes, I've been with the company for 12 years now, and 10 of those in this Kimberley region, and a couple of years previously before that as well. So I've managed to build up a pretty good knowledge of the Kimberley landscape and its history and culture. I've said previously, it's not something that you can ever know everything about. It's too long a history, and it's too complex and too deep. So, and I think that's what makes the Kimberley such a great place to visit.
Thanks. I've got to mention, one of the great things about it is that there's so many different areas that you can experience and do, and the interaction of it. And like one of my great memories of when I did the Kimberley in 2018 was doing some going through and having a look at the Indigenous rock art, and the team laid out a tarp in one of the caves or in an overhang, and we was to crawl in on our knees, then roll over onto our back, and it was like an art gallery coming to life. And you had your cameras out, but then you went, I don't want my camera. I want to be able to read and look at the story that has been there for years and years. So this is what you're going to help share that we go through?
Yeah, so we're going to start with Dantzata Bay and Jar Island in particular. And there's obviously a very long Indigenous history here, and we can't cover everything, but there's 4 or 5 art sites here, and they are from different time frames and different styles of art. And I've been lucky enough to be able to look at all of them, and they're all fascinating and amazing, but they all tell a different part of the story. And I think I always say to people there, so why are they different? Well, think about every person who's an artist is different, right? I draw my level of stick figure is different to your how you draw, right? So, and that's important to remember that. So every artist was different. They had their own take on something, and so it wasn't meant to be the same. And so another generation of art that came through, different styles would have come about. Things changed, and I think that's the amazing thing about what you're able to look at when you see this art at the various places, in particular here at Talbot Bay. In this picture you're looking at here, you can see Guion figures, but you can also see an animalistic figure on the left-hand side there. Different era, right? And different style of, this is nodulating art. You can see just on his neck there, it's got little nodules poking out, and it's a very simple form. And these particular ones, for instance, were never drawn with feet. They just came down into a clothes peg, hence the term clothes peg art. And you can see those further along, very small ones, just towards just off center there, those very small but darker areas there. You can see very simple figurines, so different style, different technique. And Jar Island is good because it provides, in different art sites, you can see much more recent Wanjina figures, which we know is post those sea levels. and they could be a few thousand years old or a few hundred years old. Some of them were done in the 1960s, right? So they can be very modern, whereas the Guion stuff is much older.
And also it goes with the tribes or the traditional owners of that particular land and what their
Correct.
story is and what their history
100%. So the Wannerable people here, it's about their stories and the art sites, other art sites that I've been to, can be telling a story for learning, for teaching children about things, or how do you hunt and what season do you hunt, or when do we do this and why do we do this?
Okay.
This is Swift Bay, and this is a fascinating art site, which there's quite a few art sites at Swift Bay, and they all tell a different story. And this particular one, where this is at the Gorge art site right at the back, and these are Guion figures, Bradshaw figures mostly, but there's all different stages and generational different paintings on here. You can see right on the left-hand side, look at that very long, elongated Guion figure, and then the two yellow figures. So that is very unique because it's been done using yellow infill, so yellow ochre, which means probably in that latter stage of the Guion stages, and you don't see that often, that infill, honestly. And then if you come down and think about, and right in the middle, you can see a very dark scalding patch on the rocks. And if you come just down, you can see a boat. People in a canoe, and then just right beside it, a series of figures that are showing probably dance maneuvers or something like that. It's like, remember the old days used to draw a stick for a flick the cards through, right? It's telling a story kind of as it goes along. So all of these, and I encourage people when you come to the Kimberley and you're looking at art sites, don't take pictures straight away. I think what I learned was just to put your camera down, or just don't take it out, or your phone, or whatever you're taking your pictures with, but take time to look at everything first and see what's there, because if you just take photos, you're going to miss everything, because there's generally so much going on in these art sites because people painted over the top of things and there's all these things. So I think that's a really good tip, is to
most definitely. Well, I totally forgot about that. There was a boat in this scene. So it was like, oh, yes, I picked up a few others, and I'm like, oh, hang on, there is a boat there.
Yeah. And this is also Swift Bay, and this is still at the Gorge art site, but just at a slightly different site. And this is where you get a great look at Wanjina figures. And these are sea coastal figures that are much more recent, only a few thousand years old, into the hundreds, and even ones that were done in the mid 1900s. And the great thing here is a lot of these, there's a lot more research and knowledge about Wanjinas because they're much newer. And there's particularly people along the coast, the Wannerable and Wodada people, they relate much more closely to Wanjinas than they do to Guion, because Guion's so old that there's a gap. But these, most of them they can tell a story about, and these guys will all have a part of this, whether it's the creation story, whatever it is, hopefully a lot of the places that we go to, we're able to tell you our knowledge of it that we've learnt from the custodians of the land, and pass that on to you. But are really fascinating figures to look at, aren't they?
And some of the sites that we go to, we do have the traditional owners come and show our guests through and speak from their family, their history.
That's
their
right.
culture.
So as much as we can, and when they're available, we certainly down the coast in the Wodada area, we always try to spend a morning or an afternoon with the traditional owners. This is Big Island, and it's a really fascinating place. And what's also great about visiting Big Island, just apart from all of the rock art and the old stories here, is if you're not overly able person in some of the rock art sites, if you're older and you're struggling on those uneven surfaces, this one you can definitely see because it's 30 meters just up the beach, and you can get a look at this art. So I always say, if you can't see us, don't worry, because you're going to be able to come here and it's easy to get to, and you can just sit back and just take in this art. And Big Island is fascinating. This is Wary Bay, because not only is there this guy who's an incredibly important Wanjina in the Warrnambool story, creator of the wet season. And what's fascinating about him is if you just look, first of all, look right into the face, you can see that those eyes have actually been carved out of the stone. So they've just got a bolt and just, it's when you're looking at him, it's what you can't take your eyes off his eyes, right? Because it's just one of those things, no matter what angle you look at, he's looking at you, right?
His eyes are following you.
His eyes are following you. And we do know a lot about this particular Wanjina because there's a lot of stories that have been passed down, which is great. I suspect, probably you were looking at a lot more because the sand levels, you can see where the sand levels are now. He was probably a whole Wanjina, but sand's built up and pushed up, and we're only probably seeing half of them. But he's incredible to see, and he sits outside the cave system as almost like a guardian. And you can see just above where you see the lady's hand there, that's a little stingray. So up on the roof, there's all these depictions of sea creatures, right? There's little sharks and stingrays and all sorts of things up on there. And then you can actually, behind the lady's legs there, you can actually see another Wanjina, and that is known as Child Kiara. It's a kid Wanjina, and much smaller head, as you can just make it out in the background, but you can get really good pictures of that one. And it actually a little different because that one has cockatoo feathers coming out of the top as its headdress. And Big Island also, the most important thing there, apart from this Wanjina, is the contact art. And that's just down further in cave. Very easy to get into and look at. And the big takeaway thing in there is the Dutch figurines. And there used to be 5 of them, and we're down to 3 because of just where it's situated. It's open to wet season and sandstorms and those sorts of things, and time is sadly dissipating, and they may well disappear into the future. But you can see 3 figurines that have been painted up there, and it's definitely contact art where they've had visitors who have come ashore, and you're looking at some Dutch figurines or people that have come ashore holding their little water containers with their Dutch pipes, and they've drawn them exactly how they looked: large Dutch hats and flowing Dutch, the robes that they wore. So it's quite an accurate depiction, and it's right there for you to look at. So they've just, after this visit's occurred, painted up what's happened, right? We better paint this up. Part of history. And then on the back side of that cave, there's 3 or 4 depictions of different ships, these American whaling ships, Dutch ships, English ships. And you can tell by their shape. There's a great one in the cave, just adjourning and next to it, of canoe. So it's such an important site for that contact art and for this really important Wanjina. Very cultural place.
Oh, fascinating. I didn't get to see that part. So when I did it, I'll have to go back.
You'll have to go back, yeah. And there's a long cultural history to it. At Montgomery Reef or Wodada Bay, it's been part of the Indigenous history for the Wodada people for a long, long time. And there's a great story going back. And there's no, I think, reason to doubt that this is not true, that there was a different group of people living on the Wodada Bay Islands nearby. What the history shows is in the late 1920s, there was a French expedition ship which had on board, and most people remember the old Pathé films that, and they were the geographer of the time. You know, we can now just watch on Netflix or on Discovery Channel, whatever. We can sit back and see the world with National Geographic or whatever it is. These guys, that's what they did back in their time, right? And they ended up in this particular area and they went ashore onto the Wodada Bay Islands, which are right by Montgomery Reef. And they filmed these guys and took photos of these very tall, athletic warriors almost, that were families that were living on these islands. And they reported that they were big and powerful and very healthy. You know, they probably have an excellent diet out there of food, but probably, you know, and there's a lot of research being done about what happened there. It's probably likely that whilst the French went there with good intentions, they probably left them with every ship disease going round at the time. And they wouldn't have had any of those, maybe not even the common cold.
Yep.
And they suspect that probably a small community like that, once all those, you know, you imagine what disease the sailors had back in the day, everything, that would have been quickly spread to the people living there. But, you know, and we weren't there and we don't know, but that's probably what went down, because these people mysteriously just disappeared off there. And there was they had a separate language that was still, a couple of people were speaking right up to sort of the 1960s and 70s, but it's gone. You know, there's people that have written things down about it, but in general, it's not spoken. But the Wodada people have a very strong connection with this particular place, Wodada Bay or Montgomery Reef. And if you do get to go to Freshwater Cove and visit with the locals there, you get to do a walk up to an art site. And one of the particular paintings there is directly about this.
Okay.
So it's quite a fascinating place. It would, you know, not just on the nature side, but the cultural history of this area was strong and is still very strong.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're coming to a close on our cultural aspect of going through the Kimberley. We do have one more webinar coming up, and that the next one in the following week, again with Steve, is the wildlife in the Kimberley. We also do have our live webinar session on the 26th of April with Dawn Singleton, one of our other expedition leaders, and I think she's joining the ship next week, I believe.
She is,
yes. So which is great. Make sure when you come on board and going to explore the Kimberley, you come with an open mind to listen and learn about the history and the culture, especially the Australian culture, the Indigenous culture. It is different, it is amazing, it's insightful. but you need come with an open mind, because you will go away with a lot of wonders. And you're just talking about the Wodada people and, you know, how they've disappeared. It's like, wow, how could a small little group just disappear? How do we know? Where's history?
That's right. It's got this amazing old history. And, you know, and also, as we did say, you know, we always try to involve as part of the trip with the Indigenous groups there. And in that particular area, right around where Yawujibai is, the Wajangara tours, which is the Wodada people, were able to visit into Freshwater Cove at the moment, and they have incredible art that you can see there that they've painted up on canvas, and also you're able to do this really not a difficult walk either, but this really nice walk up and then to a very important place called Cyclone Cave, where they used to shelter in the wet season, because it's got this huge overhang, and then you climb down underneath, and it's, no matter what the weather is, it stays perfectly dry and the same temperature all day. They've got this incredible art.
I remember going there.
And some of it is particularly about what happened out at their stories of Montgomery Reef or Yawujibai. So, you know, it fits in really nicely with that area.
No worries. Well, you'll have to come back out and show all of our guests.
I will.
Yep. No worries. Thanks, Steve, and see you next week.